Okay, so fast prayer and distractions. It's the tool I'm sharing a lot about and doing myself. I'm doing on average this week, I think, 10 to 14 hours a day. And so you just prayers like which are aimed at basically severing the ego. Um, uh, I surrender to God my addiction to thinking, and I pray to God for forgiveness, transcendence, and miracles. I surrender to God my attachment to the body, and I pray to God for forgiveness, transcendence, and miracles. All those, um, all those that really hack the ego off. Try and eliminate it ASAP. And the 14 hours of intensity, not allowing the ego to think or go into distraction where normally it will just wander and daydreaming the whole day. So having distractions is normal because that's the ego's way of fighting back. And one has to know that it's a process of um, one is really trying to see it in a very, very simple, simplistic way, which I also got as a hypnotist. It's like if I'm allowing my ego to think for, let's say I'm awake for 16 hours a day, if I allow my ego to think for 16 hours a day, then it's reinforcing the addiction to thinking for 16 hours in that day. So if I can build up my prayer practice, I'm cutting the oxygen supply to thinking. So ideally, if I can get to at least more than half of the day in prayer, so that would be about 8 hours, and then I'd be spending half the day trying to and invoke God to stop the addiction to thinking, which is one of the core machinery of the ego, and put that under threat. And it would then, and if you could, I mean, ideally, one would be praying the whole day, to surrender the core software of the ego. So trying not to allow any oxygen supply to the ego thinking in the head. Thinking in the head is just reinforcing the ego's dominance and taking one away from God's infinite love. So, so the ego is going to fight back both the ego and the collective ego through the ego has a variety of mechanisms from distracting thoughts to physical illnesses and other things. And the collective ego can organize events which are distracting as well from the prayer. Could be things like plumbing issues, who knows? So, and so distractions are to be expected. As I've noticed from my own thing, fast prayer for me has been uh, fast prayer has been. I'm shooting a video. The person who's joined. Um, Fast prayer has been the most effective tool that I've done myself. It's more effective than the observer or feel the feelings in the sense that it brings up, if done intensely for, hours, usually I'm doing at least 10 hours a day. It puts the ego under enormous threat. So it brings up everything within the ego I think it brings up the ego in one's karma in an accelerated fashion. So extreme feelings come up, extreme synchronicities in a negative fashion arise. And I'm working with someone and they're also getting the same thing. I mean, one doesn't even need to do the feel the feelings because the feelings are just brought up ferociously because the ego is under such huge threat on a daily basis because the supply to the thinking. So the distractions are normal, and one has to see how the ego is working and incorporate different prayers on an ongoing basis to try and tackle what the ego is doing with distractions. So it could be I surrender to God my the payoff I get from thinking, and I pray to God for forgiveness, transcendence, and miracles. I surrender to God my willfulness in wanting to think, and defy God. And I pray to God for forgiveness, transcendence, and miracles. I surrender, dear God, my unwillingness to give up the payoff of thinking. And I pray to God for forgiveness, transcendence, and miracles. Um, I surrender to God my, what would the word be? Unwillingness to, I guess, how would I say it? I surrender to God my unwillingness um, to go for the final runway. And I pray to God for forgiveness, transcendence, and miracles. I surrender to God my allegiance to my ego over God's presence, and I pray to God for forgiveness, transcendence, and miracles. I surrender God my addiction to the drama of being identified with my ego thoughts, and I pray to God for forgiveness, transcendence, and miracles. I surrender to dear God uh, the meaning I give to my thoughts, and I pray to God for forgiveness, transcendence. So you're just coming up with different angles. There's unwillingness, there's the addiction to the payoff, there's wanting to do other spiritual activities which are less intense. And I know with doing the Course of Miracles, which was when I went from twice a day to every hour to every 10 minutes to every 5 minutes, there was a resistance at each event, but then eventually worked. And so for me, this is fast prayer is like taking the Course in Miracles to the extreme, where it's not even every 5 minutes; it's like continuously. And so this for me is literally cutting the ability. The ego lives on just being in the head. So stopping it being in the head puts it under ferocious threat, and so it fights back, with more ferociousness than anything. So you're always, and you can just see, and if you're in this group, you can come to me, and I'll try and give different permutations to reduce the distractions. But you'll find that as you do these types of prayers, your ability to be conscious of distractions and to catch them sooner and sooner with the help of the Holy Spirit becomes better and better. So eventually, because one is continuously not letting the ego get away with being in an unconscious thinking, that one makes usually gradual progress. The main thing with fast prayer is to be regular. Um, you can also use a couple of other things, which is the Heisenberg principle and also the Roger Bannister effect with fast prayer. The Heisenberg principle is if you witness how many hours you do a day, or even better, have someone else to witness for you the amount of hours. So that will help you invoke divinity to collapse any resistance from the ego and with the fast prayer. And you want to use a couple of things which I learned from the Course of Miracles, which is try not to go backwards. So if you get to 5 hours a day of fast prayer, or 8 hours, or 10 hours, or 14 hours, try not to lose ground to the ego, and try not to break the rhythm when you get into good, like you're used to doing huge practice periods. Try to be daily in it, because it's easier to continue than if you have one huge event and then wait for a few months. The ego tends to gain ground and it becomes harder to reinstate. So for me, it's like I'm trying at the moment to have a minimum of 10 hours a day and not to go less than that, and to build on that. So ideally, and I found through doing that, also I get into flow periods. I'll talk on flow with fast prayer. If you keep doing fast prayer and do specific prayers to reduce distractions, you'll get into a flow state with praying where you don't you let go of, oops, there's a distraction probably from the negative field, but never mind. And So if you, yeah, I was saying something important to which I'll try and, yes, you get into flow states. And that's when you must stop tracking time. Don't look at any clocks. And then you focus on the prayer that you're doing over and over again. And you try and get into a rhythm with it so that it becomes effortless. And then you'll notice like an hour will just skip by and it'd be effortless. And it's because you're not tracking anything else and just surrendering to allowing the prayer to happen. Or you don't have to, you're not doing it. It's like God's doing the prayer and you're not there. And it brings an enormous sense of spiritual achievement when that happens. So try once you get into flow states, it's best to try and keep that going and improve that on a day-to-day basis. So that way, for me, my intuition is that would be really putting a nail in the ego's neck, because it's like those spiritual flow states with fast prayer and for extended periods are really like denting the ego's addiction to being in the head, which is one of the key things, which the ego lives on, just sort of thinking nonstop and being in drama the whole day. And you've got to understand that being identified with the thought field is basically allowing the perception of sovereignty to be in the ego. And it's actually an allegiance to the ego over surrendering that addiction to being in the thought field and going, if you like, to that infinite field which is behind there. And so it's sacrificing the addiction to the ego and its narcissistic claim to be the center of the universe, and valuing the love of God more than that, and trusting the love of God, and that one is accessing those divine states that will take care of you, as opposed to being in the narcissistic thinking field. So those are some tips. The key tips are um, keep it on a daily basis. Try not to lose ground with your prayer practice. Try to get into flow states. Change the prayers from time to time so that you're attacking the ego and its addiction to thinking and distractions from different angles. And try to get to those flow states. Use the Heisenberg and the Roger Bannister effect. You'll find you'll get to walls like like for me, my current wall is not more than 14 hours. It's like, my ego goes like, you don't do any more than 14. So I want to break that, have a Roger Bannister effect 1 or 2 days, hopefully, and see if I can get to 15 hours or 16 hours or 18 hours a day of prayer. I found through consistently increasing the regular amount of hours of prayer, miracles start to happen. It's like divine assistance comes to allow that once you get into the habit and the daily habit and the daily commitment. I think what also helped, fast prayer is really aimed. My intention I don't know if I developed it, but the inspiration that came for it is really to go for the final runway and really to have these prayers aimed to for the death of the ego. So it's really super, it's aimed to be super intense, super going for the core belief systems of the ego and to be unrelenting. And especially my intuition at the moment is being in the head, the addiction to thinking and thought is one of the key foundations to the ego, because it's where it goes into fantasy, control, projection, all its belief systems which flare up. Also, being in the thought field allows one's susceptibility to entering negative attractive fields, because that's where they usually things. So if you're in the infinite field and your heart is to be with God, the infinite field, the observer at all times, that for me will bring help and also divine assistance to the rigor of wanting to eliminate one's allegiance to the limited field of the ego. Okay, so I hope those tips on distractions and fast prayer were useful, and we'll see. Hopefully, this gets uploaded.